Welcome, welcome, guys. I hope you're enjoying your experience. Leafstyle, no longer a subculture, a Leafstyle. We've always been about building community, based in education, uplifting the culture, and everyone connected by cannabis in some way. You don't have to consume, you don't have to sell it, you don't have to cook with it. You can be curious, you could be a friend, you could be a parent that needs to medicate your child. All of us here today are connected for a reason, and that's cannabis. So that's what Leafstyle is about, building that community, uplifting that community, showcasing that community, and that's a lot about what this panel is about, right? And as we continue to explore the maturation of cannabis, this industry is going at incredible speeds, but it's very important that the people who are at the base, who make this thing go around, that your voice is heard. So what we try to do here at Leafstyle is, again, simply connect that community, uplift it, and make sure your voice is heard, informed, and we can move mountains, right? Sounds corny, but it's true, all right? So tonight, we have Chef Jordan Wagman to the left of me, a James Beard nominated chef, and a best-selling author. And if you heard his voice earlier, you may realize that he hails from Canada, our neighbors to the north. Welcome, Chef.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
To his left, you've already heard her speak this evening, but we really want to highlight her voice in this space. She's really doing incredible things in the culinary world, infusing cannabis, and is really at the heart of the culture when we talk about culture. Education, culture, and cannabis personifies that mission, that slogan. So welcome, Chef Nikki Stewart, the founder of the High End Affair, celebrity chef who's taken over the world in the pandemic. So we appreciate you. Thank you for joining us.
For sure.
To her left, Chef Shawn Wilder, the warm butter lobster that y'all ran through and I didn't even get to try. A restaurateur and an inspirationalist. Welcome, Chef Shawn Wilder. And to his left, my co-host on our podcast, leafstyle.com, subscribe, Dr. Safia Lynn, a medical cannabis and emergency medicine physician, a person who really understands what's going on in this medical world and cannabis. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for being here with us, Dr. Lynn.
Thank you, Juma. Does everyone know Juma? Our founder, our leader. He has hosted the night with such grace and talent. This is our resident attorney, world sociologist. Like, Juma brings us special joy to Leafstyle along with all of our partners, and it's a pleasure to be sharing this platform with all of you tonight. Let's jump into it, Juma.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. Let's get into it. Dr. Nikki. Chef Nikki.
I was like, whoa, that's new.
But you know why I was confused, right? It's the pharmaceutical science background. I didn't know how long you were in school, so I deferred.
Sure, that's okay.
But talk to us. Let's get it started. How did your relationship with cannabis begin?
I mean, my relationship with cannabis began pretty typical as a teenager smoking weed, for sure. So my father smokes, like, we used to smoke all the time. You know, as a kid growing up, my father's in construction, so that was my first memories. Like, my dad smoked weed every time he got off work. He's pouring concrete, you know, doing rehab buildings and things like that. So those were my first memories of, you know, he taught me how to roll a joint when I was 15. Yeah, so
The round of applause.
Cheers to the progressive parents from the 80s and 90s. I don't even know how that happened, but yeah, that was my first, you know, like introduction into cannabis, and just pretty much, like, we were getting trash weed for sure then. Pretty sure the weed was not as quality, and we were smoking Swisher Sweets.
Word, the Swishers.
Back in the day.
We appreciate that.
For sure. Yeah.
Chef Wilder, please tell us, when did your relationship with cannabis and cooking begin?
Man. Like 10 years ago? So I'm 32 years old now. Maybe before that, I've been cooking since I was a teenager. Yeah. I can't even put a date on it. And I've like consumed so much marijuana in between those times. But I want to say 14, 15, like first making brownies and just fucking it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like putting whole flour in there and ruining it. Yeah. It's about that time.
I think it's a typical first-timer mistake.
Yeah.
And Chef Jordan, same question. When did your relationship with cannabis begin?
I talk about it often. I have been smoking joints every day of my life since I was 12 years old. I used to
Wow,
think that
12.
since I was 12.
I thought 15 was bad.
But there's a
I'm super
story.
excited about that. 12.
The story, that the abbreviated version, is that I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease with psoriasis at 12 years old. So every night I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up with blood in my sheets, or I'd wake up with flakes all in my bed. And the only way I could wake up and go back to sleep was to smoke a joint. Back then I thought it was because I loved the Grateful Dead and I had long hair. But it turned out that, 7 years ago, when I removed gluten, dairy, and refined sugar from my diet and began consuming cannabis, then it struck me that all of these years I actually consumed cannabis for health and wellness. But it's been since I was 12 years old.
We talk a lot about that. You think you're a rec user. You're more than likely a medicinal user.
Absolutely.
Right? Right.
We're all using it for medicinal reasons or health and wellness reasons, one way or another.
Right.
We may not know it.
Right, absolutely. Chef Nikki, like I said, you took over the pandemic. We see you everywhere. I'm sitting in lockdown. Y'all look like y'all having a ball. Tell us a little bit about that experience and how your relationship working with Dave Chappelle even began.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, he took over the pandemic. I was just a support. But yeah, I mean, I've known Dave for a while, so that's just, I have that relationship there. And so in the summer, we were just doing an event called Summer Camp. And majority of the time, the meals were uninfused. I also want to be clear about that. So you don't just think that every day everybody was just like nonstop. But occasionally, not occasionally, usually every time we have something, I would have infused food kind of tucked away, right? So at all of the shows, my food truck would run for the audience. We would have food for the green room, things like that. So I would just kind of quietly sneak in cannabis infused items per request off the truck, or when we would have events. And so that kind of got into the media in a couple different ways. Right. Meaning that somebody snitched, they kind of dry snitched, but it was cool.
You naming names?
Yeah, Chris Rock dry snitched on me on the Ellen show, but about just basically saying that Dave Chef does these dope things with cannabis and mushrooms. And so because of that, that kind of also generated some additional media buzz around what I was doing. But to be honest, I mean, I've been doing events for a while before the pandemic, infused events. I did Snoop's first launch for his party, let's see, it was 2017 for Mary Jane. I've just been quietly doing them. So I like to operate in being the most known unknown, because it's a safe space for me, if you can understand what I'm saying. That way,
you're no longer unknown.
Exactly.
In the event, it's not known to you. You are definitely known.
Man, and it was crazy because I remember the moment that I was just I actually have to create some separation between, I have to have a publicist now. This was weird. It was a weird thing for me to actually not have to talk to people directly. And a lot of articles and a lot of media, I literally remember getting an email from Forbes, and I was this gotta be spam. It's gotta be. Forbes asked me to do quarantine recipes. And so I did my first article in Forbes magazine that involved quarantine Thanksgiving and recipes for your family, because that shit was weird the first Thanksgiving, right? And it was just like, you know, like people were just, everybody's acting weird and you got to be in your little bubble. But my thing was, we might as well all be high as hell anyway. So let me give you some recipes to get that done. Yeah, so it's been a very interesting thing for me. And I think because of my background in pharmacy and me merging the two, culinary and pharmaceutical pharmaceutical sciences, which I did do pharmaceutical sales, but I did compounding pharmacy. Compounding pharmacy is very similar to just cooking, because you're just mixing ingredients, measuring, weighing things out, and that became my avenue for dosing. And so I have a little bit of a different edge when it comes to understanding how your body metabolizes things and how to dose things properly, just because I was doing it with real drugs, not plant medicine.
Speak to it. And that's super important, because even from your medical background, so many patients are naive to edibles and dosing that they go high. They're like, I don't feel it in the first 10 minutes. Let me take another one. 30 minutes in, you're like on a cloud, not even understanding what's going on, because it just was a little too much. And it has to do with your metabolism. It has to do with what other components you eat or drink at the moment. So how full or how empty your stomach is. Also co-ingestions. What other medications do you take? So it's an art to understanding how to dose for different clientele. Everybody has different levels of consumption and experience with the plant.
You also got to think about, when you take a prescription, it doesn't work immediately. You don't just like, let me just pop another one, right? Usually, if you even take ibuprofen, you're going to let it like work for at least 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, typically when you get a prescription, it's every 4 to 6 as needed, or whatever the case may be. But when you consume an edible, I don't know why people automatically think in their mind like, this shit's got to work now. I'm not high. And then you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going.
Are y'all listening?
And then you find yourself in a hole. So of course you got to go slow in the beginning to find a comfortable balance for you and your body. And you have to also know what your edibles are made of, because nowadays there's edibles that bypass the liver. There's a lot of different options. And then you have D8, you have all kinds of different versions of THC, that do a lot of different things. THCA, V, we got a lot of options coming out here.
Well, and then the impact of sugar on all of the above,
and lipids,
right,
yeah,
and how bioavailable your cannabis becomes when you're combining it with refined sugar. The premise that I built my entire brand upon is, let's just think about it intuitively. If you are trying to take something to lower your elevation, such as cannabis, and you are taking it in conjunction with refined sugar, which increases your inflammation, what's the net result in taking that? It's a zero. Plus, the bioavailability of your cannabis just isn't there, because now your body wants to absorb the sugar. And I don't even play a doctor on TV, so please, seriously, so tell me if I'm wrong. But many of the doctors that I've pitched this hypothesis to agree that when you're taking something with refined sugar, your body wants to absorb that sugar first.
Absolutely correct. Sugar is going to be the go-to. You're going to steal that first and then use whatever's left over to fulfill your needs. Chef Wilder, speak to me a little bit about, everyone has mentioned a medicinal reason, whether known or unknown, for why they started to consume cannabis. Tell me a little bit about what drew you into the field with cannabis and cooking.
Cannabis and cooking specifically?
Whatever you want to share.
It was really just to make money and to medicate myself as a teenager, because I always, I would sell edibles I made at school. Yeah. And then, I drew away from it, and then I went into owning a couple restaurants. And then right before coronavirus, I saw an opportunity, and I jumped on it. And so now I'm on my 5th year in the rec and med market in Colorado. And then we work with other companies to like end of life health So we do like really fucking strong medical gummies for people that have cancer and close to death and stuff like that. And I don't know. I saw an opportunity and I took it, and I'm glad that I did it because I hate the restaurants. So I will never go back to that. Cannabis gives me a flexible life. You know, I can take care of a lot of people, and it helps a lot of people with it too. So that's pretty much it. Got to keep on going.
But talk about that, because you're heavily in extraction and sort of the science around that.
Specifically the solventless extraction.
Talk a little bit about this, just explaining this process in creating these gummies. And you're in Colorado, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So their market is more advanced than Florida's. So tell us a little bit about what's happening out there, specifically in the extraction world.
In the extraction world is making a little bit of money, but the weed market crashed everywhere in this whole country. You know, you have a license and you can buy award-winning pounds in Colorado for $600. People are freaking out. Everybody's going to jail. It's a rough time right now, and especially for like novice growers. But I think it's going to work out for the better, because it's just like anything. You know, it's going to weed out the people who can't survive. But right now we're in a fucked up situation. A lot of people are over there, but that's where extracts was able to stick through, and edibles. Not so much the vape pens anymore, but extracts and edibles are really good, and because the flower market took a big old dump. And then I work specifically with solventless hash rosin. So indoor plants, it's more expensive than gold per ounce. And I took a chance to join a company about 5 years ago when nobody knew what it was, and best decision of my life. Once, about a year or two ago, it started popping off. Now, solventless, which means we're just washing it with water and ice, RO water, and it's trichome isolation. They go through micron bags, and then you freeze it in a freeze dryer, and then we press it at a certain PSI and temperature, and then you cure it, and then there you go. It's the most expensive product and the most compact and the most medicinal, because it's just pure fatty lipids. And then so it's better when you have butane extraction and distillate and all these other things. There's a lot of crap that's in there. They use actual butane or whatever, and which I have a lot of companies that are stuck with the machinery, because it costs a lot of money to have the machinery. But that's what sets it apart with the solventless. And I feel that the future of cannabis is going towards healthier ways to consume it, and solventless hash rosin is the best way in the market right now. And because I've always done fine dining, if it comes to lobster or this, that, I always try and do the best, as far as like the most expensive, the best, like most refined. So I just took that same integrity that I have with the food into the cannabis, and it worked. Right. And but yeah, hash rosin is it. And yeah.
All right.
Can we get a round of applause for the educational breakdown just now from the beginning to the end? Thank you, Chef Wilder, for that.
Chef Wagman. So he talks about a little bit about the perspective in Colorado. Again, you're our friend from the north in Canada who went rec. When did they go legalize? It's one of the first countries in all the world to legalize cannabis. Talk to us a little bit about that perspective, what's going on there. How's that market, and how specifically do you think the legalization removes some of the stigma? Are you feeling freer in Canada?
So, I think us being here tonight, I think chefs of this caliber, I think people like you of your caliber being a part of cannabis all collect, the collective helps to remove the stigma. What I wrote a manifesto not long ago, and I talked about how, in the 80s and 90s, it was all Cheech and Chong and Spicoli. And, I was the stoner, the burnout, the pothead. And now who are the stoners, burnout, and potheads? But all of those, lawyers and doctors and teachers and moms, dads, it's just all of us. Right now, the stigma continues. But because we are legal, it now gives the opportunity or the platform to have the conversation openly. It also allows me to educate people through my food openly, and in allowing people to come to my home and enjoy a 15-course infused experience. But that, because I'm pairing it with seasonal ingredients, that is, it's refined. It's a refined approach to culinary. that in and of itself helps to remove the stigma. But there's stigma that we fight every single day. The moment somebody smells cannabis on me, they go back to when I'm the long-haired 13-year-old, you know, the burnout stoner pothead. So,
Long hair? You sure?
yeah, I said long time ago, brother. long time ago.
Chef Wilder, can you talk a little bit about sort of, you talked about the brownies. We all had the brownie experience. At least that's how, the only thing I knew how to make. What is one of the wilder stories about those infusions going wrong in the early days?
I don't remember them because I just, you black out and it's over. Honestly, and it happens. I have big production days even now for the gummies, and I'd be fucking up. Yeah, so I gotta stop because it's like so much money and so much material I'm working with, and I gotta, if I fuck around and eat too much, I just got to shut the day down, and I'll figure it out the next day. And yeah, but that's.
I wish
yeah.
my wife would let me do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to because it'll just fuck your whole day up because you'll be in on some chef shit, right? You'll be all in your groove and you got your music, whatever the fuck you got going on. You're in the vibe, and then that one little extra too much just fucking hits you, and then you're like, and you fuck everything up. Yeah.
Nikki, I see the face. Is that you can relate?
I guess, I can definitely relate. I've fucked myself up a lot of times. I mean, I think it's just par for the course. You know what I mean? When we're doing R&D and I'm doing R&D for products right now for my own product launch. And it's just I can have I have water soluble rosin. If it gets underneath my fingernails and I'm just damn.
Oh, I got some of that shit with me.
Fuck. You know what I mean? Different things like that. Even though we use, we use some pretty high-end products, and when we're trying to, even when I'm doing the high-end affair, I have a policy that no one can eat any infused food while we're working, right? But it's somehow at the end of the night, the build-up for me, I've definitely have had moments where I've spaced out and having full-ass conversations with senators and other people, and I'm like, man. But I think it's, like I said, it's par for the course. It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. And if it didn't happen, you probably aren't doing your job right.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to know thyself, right?
You have to know yourself. But I mean, I guess for me, I'm one of those people that, as far as when I'm infusing food, I infuse last. Okay. Because of the type of products that I use. So I make sure the integrity of my food is exactly how it's supposed to be, and exactly how I want it to taste.
Are you individually dosing?
I am individually dosing. Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I do mostly. It depends. If I'm doing things in batches, when I do events of 400 people, it's a little tough. That's 400 times X amount of courses, which is a lot of work. But outside of individual dosing, when we do massive things that I, already do the math and the calculations, but past that, I lost my train of thought because I might have got high real quick. Past that, I do, the reason, because I change products intentionally because I'm doing one-to-ones on some. I'm doing different ratios and different 3-to-1s, 1-to-1s, and that just means that I'm blending THC and CBD or some other version, of product just to give you a balanced experience, because you can have a really unbalanced experience if you overconsume, and I can't watch everybody. I do ask that you just be 21 plus an adult. Right. Outside of that, we'll take care of you with an undo. So I do have a great product, though. There's a product.
Talk about it.
It's not my product. It's a woman in Arizona. She developed this product called Undo. It's just called Unblaze the Haze. It would take your high down in about 30 minutes. Cold pressed olive oil caps, oleic acid. There's a bunch of little small things in there that just strips your endocannabinoid system real quick. It's a super hard reset. So every guest in my party gets one of those. Any event, it's in your bags. It's everywhere. Someone's happy. So you'll never leave uncomfortable.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. So there are times I have those in my backpack.
Right.
for myself.
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah.
I remember, that's funny you say this, because I remember, who just say sugar, drink something sweet. And from hearing your conversation
Oh, somebody
earlier-
told you that?
Yeah, like I'm talking
Somebody
25
told you
years
were
ago.
high, you should drink something sweet.
Absolutely. No one's
Bruh.
ever heard the little sugar cubes? Ah, wow, yes. And I know.
I've never
I know.
heard that.
What city
You
did
might be
you grow
dating
up
yourself,
in?
Juma.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Everybody.
no, that's tough. I mean, the old school ways
Dang.
is like black
Y'all
peppercorn,
making me-
CBD,
okay.
things like that.
Yeah. But seriously, sugar does not work. But CBD, Doc, please expand, because we just went through this evening.
Your euphoria is experienced, and it can be balanced, and it can be unforeseen for you. So the question is, what kind of experience do you want to have with cannabis? And a lot of that has been found to have a greater effect with the hybrid of CBD and THC rather than THC alone. So that expulsion, that really necessary even keel balance that you need to perform at your optimal ability can be achieved with a combination greater than it can be with THC extract alone. So
And how does the CBD work if you're feeling maybe not yourself too much edibles? How does the CBD work in sort of countering that effect?
CBD is anti-inflammatory, right? So a lot of that inflammation is due to that experience, that negative experiences you're having. So CBD is an amazing anti-inflammatory that can help mitigate a lot of those symptoms for you. So I want you to think of CBD as your daily vitamin, something that you take consistently, regularly throughout the course of your life to help with overall homeostasis. And I want you to think of THC as your Tylenol. You can take it episodically when you need it for pain relief, anxiety, different ailments, right? So I want you to have that mind frame of how CBD needs to be administered consistency and regularity to help you achieve the greatest efficacy in it. Versus THC, you can use it on a more as-needed basis.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you for that. Speaking of that inflammation that Dr. Lynn was just referencing, as a person who suffers from psoriasis, talk to us a little bit about how that informs your cooking and just how you consume cannabis now.
It's my entire brand. It's the pillars in which my whole life is built upon. You know, my goal is to sort of just change the narrative of what cannabis can be in food and beverage, right? Where it's not just the brownies, cookies, and so on. We've proved it here tonight. I try to go one step further in trying to make it healthy. And so, you know, that's ultimately my goal. Changing my diet and consuming cannabis changed my life. I've struggled with mental health since I was a kid, and we could go on and on about what caused that. But truth is, I still struggle with mental health. But cannabis helped me, and my diet helped me find my physical health. So when I got my skin under control, my autoimmune disease under control, it's amazing how quickly I became a much happier person. My wife liked me a lot more. My kids liked me a lot more. Truthfully, and I'm not even saying it tongue in cheek. I mean it literally. I was just a much better person to be around. So cannabis has changed my life. So I feel like, why can't I help change at least one person's life a day? That's the goal.
Right. Absolutely. Dr. I keep calling you doctor.
Chef
No.
Nikki.
Chef Nikki.
in the building.
No, I did.
I was like, wait, again?
No, again. But
I
Chef,
just know the mac and cheese is hitting a lot of folks up here.
The smack.
And whatever else
The
is hitting a lot of
smack
folks
mac
up
and
here.
cheese.
I'm just
Yo.
saying, everybody's
Yo.
slurring a little bit.
No, this is true. But you know when you said that?
Yeah.
The worst part
What?
was my guy, my co-founder, is back there laughing at me.
It's laughing at you.
And that's what I saw.
That's funny.
So just to follow up with that, when we talk about a little bit about the smack mac and cheese, which I did consume, and we're thinking about sort of where this culture is going, the maturation of cannabis. As someone who is really close to the culture, where do you see, what stage are we at? Where do you see this going? Sort of the culinary, more just part of a lifestyle, Where do you really see this going in the next few years?
Well, I'm pretty excited about it. And I mean, I'm excited about it as somebody that is literally on the cusp of, just kind of leading this, like, pathway.